All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the WatchWell Podcast, where we help movie watchers examine philosophies for movies to demonstrate that you must know Christ to understand story. We exist to help build up the church's ability to combat the passive consumption of entertainment and pursue a more complete biblical worldview. And today we have a special guest on, Jacob, my man. Welcome to the show. Super pumped to have you, man.
Me, guys. Yeah, this is awesome. I'm super excited to talk about this amazing and underrated, criminally underrated movie.
Yeah, we totally agree. Jacob, go ahead and tell everybody, all the viewers, a little bit more about you and where they can find you.
I'm just a guy. I'm a husband, a father. I fancy myself a writer, but I don't know that anybody's reading anything that I'm writing. So. I do. But you can find me on Twitter. Do you? Well, I appreciate that.
Dude, your tweets are fire, man. Or are we calling them tweets anymore?
X's, I guess. I don't know.
Post?
Yeah. Tweets is fine. I'm old enough that I don't care at this point what he calls it.
Right.
The platform formerly known as Twitter.
Right.
But yeah, so I tweet a lot, probably more than I should, and thank God I have got my wife there to keep it somewhat tempered. But I do get into the weeds sometimes.
Right. Yeah, they do a good job at that, keeping everything, I guess, or keeping our head above water, keeping the status quo, making sure we don't jump off into the deep end. Cool. Nick, I think you said before we started you wanted to skip our usual rundown and just jump right into it because we've got a lot going on. So I'm cool with that. But before we do that, I have to ask, how was your week? Man.
It was a good week, Parker. I don't know why. If I were sitting in an interview and someone asked me, how was your week? I wouldn't have an answer even then. So this is the most difficult question to answer for me, and I have no idea why. It was a good week. That's the best I got for you.
You're my co-host here, and I really have missed you. We've had a lot of technical difficulties lately, and this is the first podcast that we will have produced in like a month because of everything that's been going on. So, yeah, we're glad to be back. I hope you're glad to be back. Despite maybe a crazy I'm glad to be back. Yeah, it feels great to just kind of tune the world out for a little bit, sit down, talk about a movie, and kind of how it can bring others closer to Jesus, and do the whole theology thing, right? Like, who doesn't want to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Cool,
yeah, absolutely.
So Jacob, would you like to start us off with just like an overview of the movie, just simple characters? And then when you're done with that, tell us why you picked the movie that you did.
Yeah, so I picked I think it was 2011 movie Warrior. It stars Tom Hardy, Joel Edgerton, Nick Nolte. You have the IMDb description it just says the youngest son of an alcoholic former boxer returns home where he's trained by his father for competition in a mixed martial arts tournament. A path that puts the fighter on a collision course with his estranged older brother.
Oh, I love it, man.
Which is it's a great description. It doesn't give away too much. There's not any, there's really no spoilers in the movie. Like the trailer kind of made it seem like the fact that they're brothers is like a big third act reveal, but it's not. You find out within the first couple of minutes of the movie.
Right.
So it's really not that big of a deal, but it is, as far as why I picked it's a movie that was not on my radar, to be honest. Mm-hmm. It was, I saw the trailer and I wasn't impressed. I'm not an MMA guy at all. Like other than, I don't know, Conor McGregor, the people that have kind of broken into movies, I don't know any MMA fighters. So it's not my scene. And so the trailer and the subject matter just made it seem like it wasn't up my alley in any way. And then I don't remember if it was a friend or a movie review or something like that recommended it to me. And so I decided, all right, I'm going to give this a try. And I honestly have watched it probably 15 times since then. It's easily in my top 3 favorite movies of all time because it's not a movie about MMA. It is as much about MMA as like Dawn of the Dead is about zombies. Like Dawn of the Dead is about commercialism and all these other themes. This is about family, and this is about specifically an estranged family that was ripped apart because of one man who wasn't leading his family the way that he should, and the set of circumstances that brings them all back together, where they're kind of faced with either reconciliation or like total destruction as a family. So I think it's just unbelievably good. And when you guys asked me what movie I wanted to talk about, it was the first one that came to mind. Couldn't help it.
Yeah. So I remember, to kind of go off of what you said about the trailer, making it seem like it revealed a spoiler, or you know that this was this big thing, this big twist in the movie that no one was supposed to know. That's actually the reason why I didn't go see it in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I was like, well, maybe it's a good movie, but they just gave it all away. Like, why would I? This trailer just gave it all away. It's not going to be a good experience. And then when I finally did watch it, probably a year, I think, after it was in theaters, I was blown away because I was disappointed, because I would have loved to see it in theaters after having seen it. And I was disappointed that they actually didn't reveal anything. Like that wasn't the concern of it being, this twist that was revealed was completely unfounded. Like, I don't know if they intentionally did that in the trailer to try to build intrigue, but from a box office perspective, this movie was a flop. Mm-hmm. Like, I think when you look at the cast and everything, the amount that it made, the amount of money that it made just does not measure up to the other films that the cast is in. And I think it might be because of that trailer, because people thought, like I did, that, this twist is given away and there's no point in going to see it now. And if those people watch it, they'll be disappointed that they didn't go see it in theaters, just like I was.
Yeah, it was a bum trailer for sure. I can't say that I could do any better. I don't know how they could have cut a good trailer from the movie, because I don't know. It's like, how do you hype a movie like this? I don't know how you would do that. But
do you guys think that you could actually? Do you think that the movie could actually have been done without revealing that early on? Because the main reason why you picked the movie, Jacob, was because it's all about family. But if you don't know that they're brothers, does it have the same effect? I don't know.
I don't know how you could have. I mean, there's so many scenes that are so pivotal to the movie where, you think about, like, we're going into spoilers, right? Like,
of course. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Expired.
For sure. Yeah. Spoilers for sure.
Yeah. So you have that scene where it's after Tommy, which is played by Tom Hardy. He's come home to Nick Nolte, Patty's house, and Patty goes to Philadelphia to try and mend the bridges with Joel Edgerton's character Brendan, and like, that scene is so heart-wrenching and rich. That I don't know, like, I would have been really disappointed if I would have known that scene existed and didn't make the movie, because you see that part where he's standing there and he sees his granddaughters in the doorway and he has a relationship with his family, and that would have been a real miss if they would have cut that out. So based on the character development, I really don't know how you could have preserved that for, to make it a third act reveal. I don't think it would have been satisfying at all.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I just
definitely.
I just had a thought, so I had to take a note. So I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not on X. I was taking a note.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead, Nick. What were you going to say?
I think it could not have been a third act reveal. It could not have been a big twist. But in the trailer, they should have just moved that line when the commentary guy announcing the fight says, "Oh, and they're brothers." They should have just moved that line to the beginning of the trailer, because then that
Sure.
removes any feeling of it being a twist.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Then maybe people would have, I don't know, maybe just the story itself would have been intriguing enough for people to go see it. I don't know. And maybe that had no impact at all. Maybe it's just me. But
is there a way that you think that the movie could have been filmed, or even the screenplay, the chronology of things? Do you think it could have been written better?
No.
No, I'm so satisfied. Maybe it's just the amount of affection that I have for it, but I really think that it was all aces. I really do.
Yeah. I have a cinematography, or maybe a creative idea. Can I run it by you and see what you think? And your bias is totally established. That's totally cool. If you hate it, you can say it. But
by all means, let's do it.
Okay, so my creative idea is the big twist. So there were a few twists in the movie, right? There was that Tommy was AWOL from his military group. I forget, it was like battalion or whatever it was. And,
he was a Marine,
right? Yeah. So he left his post, and then the other one was that his buddy died, and he was trying to provide for his buddy's wife and child or children. I'm actually kind of forgetting if there were multiple kids, but that was kind of a bigger reveal, right? But what if, do you think there would have been a little bit better of a reveal to reveal those little things as they did, but start the movie off as they are fighting each other? Like more of like a round one kind of thing. So like bell rings, movie opens up, and Tommy and Brendan, thank you, are fighting. And we know they're brothers, but they're in this MMA fight. And then it cuts from the fight to the cuts in and out from the fight to the chronology that we saw dispersed in there. And then you realize at the very end that you're in the final fight, and you didn't realize that it was the final fight for the championship or whatever, and everybody was watching at the school. And that was my idea. I thought if I could make it better, maybe that could have invoked maybe a little bit more of a twist or something. It doesn't look like you're buying it, and that's totally cool.
No, I don't think so. And the only reason I say that is because all of the development they do along the way, I don't think that, like any good sports movie, you know that the underdog is going to be up against the big dog in the final battle. And so there's nothing about it that's surprising. So to your credit, like to what you're saying, I think that it's not going to give away anything that it wouldn't have otherwise.
Right.
But everything up to that point feels so earned because you see the characters going through all of this adversity. You see, like I think one of the biggest strengths of the movie is the fact that they're not doing it for glory or fame or self-congratulation or anything like that. They both have very, very good, honorable reasons for participating in this tournament. And so as you see them going through and Brendan, his story is very, very simple. He's a good man, a teacher. Everybody's rooting for him. He's the obvious hero of the movie. And then you see Tommy, who's this like caged animal the whole time. And then you start seeing that the behind this gruff, grizzled exterior, there is someone who is very honorable, very misguided in a lot of ways, out of control of his emotions, and his very reckless, but very, I think, at the core, a decent guy. And so all that character development brings you then to the end where they're now up against one another. And it almost makes it so that you're like, you don't know who to root for. You don't know who you want to win. And I think that's more the conflict than what's actually happening in the ring as far as the actual fight. Obviously, there's relational stuff that's happening there. But as the audience, I think that tension of not knowing who you want to win in that is pretty strong.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I was thinking of that theory was because to me the fight, like you said at the beginning as we opened the episode, it's not an MMA fight. It's an analogy. The MMA fight is an analogy that simplified, family's worth fighting for. And sometimes you have to fight in order to further those relationships. Like you have to put work in and you have to go where people don't normally want to go. And so if we were to make it better, because I'm not even saying that it would, if we were to make it better, I thought having that fight scene, like not knowing that was the final round, could have been like a cool spinoff. Nik, I think you disagree.
I do. I'm with Jacob. Yeah, I 100%. I think opening the movie right there in Pittsburgh, and I mean, basically you're in Patty's car, right? And he's listening. I think with Moby Dick going on on the speakers, I don't think there was a better way to do it. And as he's driving up, he comes to his house and he sees Tommy just sitting there on the porch. And he's shocked by it. I think I think when you look at the story as a whole, I don't think there's a better way to open it than that right there.
Okay, so let's start there then. So Patty's in the car listening to Moby Dick and he sees Tommy.
I like, one of the things that I like about it is that it doesn't ease you into it. It just throws you in and you just have to pick things up as you go along. And I think that's one of the cool things about the movie is that because it goes at that pace from the beginning, it lends itself to revealing more about itself with each subsequent watch. Like I just watched it again, and I noticed things that I hadn't picked up in the first 15 times I'd watched it. So I think it's very much like an onion, like Shrek likes to say.
Yeah.
That there's layers. But that, seeing Patty, like we established something in the opening moments where we see a man who is coming out of a church. He's got a rosary hanging from his rearview mirror. So he's either coming from a church service or maybe some sort of group. It's happening in the evening. So, it could be some sort of like a group session of some sort. And he's driving this old beat up classic car, and it's like an old sedan, I think. And then he pulls up and he's listening to Moby Dick. And so it's very dense and rich right from the get-go, which is especially surprising for what, like we talked about from the trailer, appears to just be an MMA movie.
Right. And we're immediately, and also what's coming out of that, you kind of described it more specifically, but overarching, we get Moby Dick and we get a man who is just riddled with shame, just guilt, and just broken.
Yeah. And then that Moby Dick theme plays throughout like the entire movie. And then in that opening scene, once they're inside the house, you also get all of the information about past abuse. You get the information about Patty being a man who abused his wife and hit her with a really, I thought it was a great line that I think Tommy says, this place doesn't have much of a woman's touch. And then Patty says, well, there hasn't been anybody since your mother. And then Tommy's mean but witty response is, yeah, it's hard to take a girl who can it's hard to find a girl who can take a punch nowadays. Right? So like that gives you insight into what is it that Tommy witnessed as a kid? What is it that Tommy's father was subjecting his family to? And meaning Tommy's father, Patty, like you get the picture of all of this trauma, even in just, this is probably 3 minutes into the movie where these things are happening. And you just get that entire picture of this abusive alcoholic man who was horrible to his wife and kids. And now you also get the picture of he's a man who's trying to make up for that in some way, right? So he's battling the shame, but he's trying on some level to be better than he was then. And then now the one who he did all this to, or one of the family members who he did all this to, is right there face to face with him, throwing it all in his face again. Right. And so it's just, the conflict is just full force from the outset of the movie.
And they did a really good job. I will have to agree with you guys that they did a good job explaining all of that without it feeling like they were explaining it.
Mm-hmm.
Like they did a really good job not like overwriting it. It was like you were just there in the room with them and hearing things. And it kind of made me feel like I was actually a character in the movie witnessing this conversation and learning the backstory. Some movies it's like, oh, well, they had to put that information in there so the viewer would know, and it didn't seem genuine. Mm-hmm. But this felt very genuine to me.
Yeah.
Well, and we also, one of the important things that we learn in this scene is that Patty is a recovering alcoholic, that he's sober now, because Tommy shows up with a bottle of booze and Patty says, that's not for me anymore. And he offers him a cup of coffee instead. And, you know, I'm sure we'll dig into this deeper, but Tommy is very much, you know, and we'll talk about these characters as though they're real people. So, but Tommy is very much his father remade. They were both Marines. He's obviously abusing alcohol. Later we see that he's abusing some sort of pills. That's not really expanded on, but it you know, at least is alluded to, or there's a scene where you see that. And you see that Tommy came into that situation expecting the father that he remembered, the, you know, drunk, aggressive, mean man. And what he found instead was this broken and contrite, old, sober guy that's living alone and listening to Moby Dick. And he got angry. Like you can see how angry he is with his father. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that his father isn't his expectations weren't met, even though his expectations were, you know, terrible to begin with.
And the other thing you find out is that Tommy and Brendan's mom was sick and died. You find that out in that opening scene too, because when I can't remember exactly the order of things in that opening scene, but something happens and, you know, Tommy mockingly says, "Oh, you found God," or something like that. And then Tommy says something like about his mom, that she cried out to Jesus, but he must have been down at the VA with the alcoholics or something like that.
Yeah.
So you even further, like not only was Tommy abused by his dad, not only was Tommy's mom abused by his dad, but she also got sick and died. And now the abuser is supposedly better, right? Like, and I'm sure that's just such a relatable struggle. Like when you've been hurt by somebody, and you know, it is possible to be hurt by somebody and not have ill will towards them, but that's not our natural course of, that's not the natural course of things. If someone hurts you, typically you're going to want them to have some type of payback, right? You want some type of, you know, you could call it vengeance or you could say justice depending on the situation. And even more so if, you know, you witnessed somebody being abused, you were abused, and then your safe space passed away and died while the abuser is going on free as if he's fine now. Like that would be, coming to that realization would be an incredible like struggle.
Right.
And incredibly difficult to get past.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've talked about one side. Let's talk about the next. So we open up in, is it a chemistry class?
No, it's actually his daughter's birthday party.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Brendan's daughter's birthday party.
Yeah, so we see Brendan is a struggling to make ends meet teacher. His wife is also in the school system. I can't remember. Was it a teacher or is she some administrator or something?
No, I think she was a waitress, actually.
Was she? Because
she wasn't at the school.
I thought that she was, because when he gets let go, she knew the information before him, and it sounded like she had some knowledge of the administration, like making the decision on his unpaid leave of absence. Remember that scene when they're in the bathroom?
Yeah, I think she just got a phone call from the school. But there's a scene where he gets home and she's getting ready to go to work, and he's working out in the garage.
Yes.
And she's leaving, and she's wearing kind of like a short skirt and a tank top or something like that. Something that's a little bit none of us would want to see our wives leave the house wearing.
Right.
And he says, well, if you have any trouble, let me know and I'll come down there. And
so like maybe
I think
at the bar,
like a waitress or a bartender or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I didn't really pick that up. So good job. Okay. So we see that he's a struggling teacher and trying to make ends meet. And that's kind of like they did a good job showing that both are struggling. Right. And you see that Patty does not have a relationship with his grandkids and really doesn't have a relationship with either. It's just different.
And you see that they're like Tommy and Brendan, and then you can throw Patty in there as well. But the two brothers are polar opposites.
Yeah.
In terms of their life situation, how their life has gone since they got out of their house. They're the complete opposite, completely different directions, completely different personalities, completely different ways of dealing with the pain they experienced as kids. Everything about them, other than the fact that they're family, is just couldn't be more different.
Yeah, you definitely see Brennan trying to break the cycle for sure.
Yeah, he is. He's a very honorable man. What we see in the very beginning of his story is, as I said, he's at his daughter's birthday party, and there's a couple of clues that they give us in that scene that indicate the kind of man he is. Number one is the very first time that we see him, he's sitting there having his face painted by his daughter, and says that he's going to be a princess, a pretty princess. And you see that he is not so proud that he's not willing to be humiliated for his kids, which I think is an admirable quality. And then whenever she's opening her gifts, he gives her one that's in this very, very large box. It's obviously something big, probably cost more than what they could afford. And his wife leans over and says, I thought we had a budget.
Yeah.
And he said, she only turns 7 once or whatever, however old she is. And so we see somebody who, and this is such a strong, well-written screenplay, because we're shown so much and in such short order that we know these characters well without there having to be a ton of exposition or these ham-fisted scenes. Just in those couple of minutes, we see this is a man who is doing right by his family in a way that his father didn't. We've already seen that established. And he's just he's trying to be a decent, good man. And I think he's succeeding at that. And his head is on straight in a lot of ways.
With one exception. He lies to his wife about how he's earning his extra income, right? Says he's working as a bouncer or security instead of when he's actually fighting, right? He's fighting in the parking lot of clubs and places like that. So with I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing, but just with that one exception.
Well, and I think that's the difference between masculinity and a biblical understanding of masculinity, because, I think that anybody from the world would say that he was justified in lying to his wife, because it's not like he was running around behind her back. He was doing this for them. And so he knew that he could make money this way, and he knew that she wouldn't approve of it because he'd been hurt in the past. And so this is it's an honorable lie. Now, as believers, we say, well, no, that's, the means don't justify the end doesn't justify the means, rather.
Right.
And so, he did wrong for the right reason, but he still did wrong.
Right.
And we have to contend with that, and he has to find a more honorable way to do that.
Yeah, honorable lie. You could just change the words and say honorable sin, and it doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because it like in the biblical, masculinity, understanding or however you want to word that, it would have been totally within his headship, right, to say, hey, we need extra money. I'm going to go do this. And even hear his wife out and, you know, understand that there's a history there with him getting hurt and she doesn't want to watch it again. But like, we still need to pay bills and I have to do this, you know, for the family. So this is what's going to happen.
Which he turns around and does later.
Yeah. Which he does. Yeah.
That exact conversation.
Yeah.
When we get to the bigger fight later.
Right.
Yeah.
It just should have happened earlier.
Right.
Okay. So what's next, fellas? I don't want to miss a big point.
Well, I think that sets the stage for just about everything that comes after. So in the film, and
it does. For sure.
I guess maybe the one thing that I would add is he is a struggling teacher or financially struggling teacher, but in the classroom scene that we do have, it's clear that he's also loved by his students. Mm-hmm. That he's a teacher who cares about his students. He's not overly strict or overly disciplinarian. He's actually engaged in he's trying to teach in a way that engages his students. Yeah. And it's clear that they respond to the way that he teaches, and he's a very good teacher. He's not just, he's not just doing it for money, like maybe the fighting that he was doing because he needed the extra money, but he is a very good teacher who his students seem to adore and look up to.
Definitely has a lot of influence in the community. And I guess the next big thing, Jacob, since you are an expert on the movie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the next big thing would be the actual fighting. Because Tommy asks his dad Patty to train him.
Well, and then that does happen, but there is a key, very crucial scene that happens prior to that where he starts going to the gym to work out, and there is
yes, thank you. Yeah, that's right. And they film it on the phone, and then that goes crazy.
So that goes. He puts a beat down on.
What an awesome scene!
It's amazing. I mean, within seconds, decimates this guy.
What does he say? What does he say? He walks up to that trainer guy. He's like, "You owe me $150."
Yeah,
like mic drop. Like so good.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And
it gets the testosterone flowing, man.
Yeah, despite the fact that I'm not an MMA guy. I mean, this gets the blood pumping. It's awesome.
Like every guy in their life wants one of those moments.
Oh yeah, where they just waylay somebody.
yeah, and then it's like I've proven myself. That's really the overarching feeling. You know, it could come in various ways, whether it be a fight, whether it be whatever. But even biblical masculinity, you want that sense of like, I've proved myself. Where's my $150?
Where's my money?
Where's my money? Because I just did it. You know. Go ahead, Nick. You look like you have something to say.
Well, they also do the way that they present that in the build up to that in the gym, to the build up to that moment. Tommy just kind of walks in, right, looking for a membership to the gym, and he almost comes across as this like timid, untrained beginner, right? Like, but he's the one displaying that image on purpose. Like he knows there's this tension there where. What he's portraying himself to be, this, I can take a punch. He can just come in and beat up on me. I can be his punching bag for a little bit. That's not a big deal. But he knows, like you can tell, he knows that once this fight, the sparring session starts, he is going to decimate this dude. And he's not afraid. He's not like, he just knows it. And there's that tension that you can see where like, it's just the way, again, it goes back to the writing of the film. It's like the characters shine through and their personalities shine through so much that in every scene, there's these nuances just like that. Like he's acting this timid, but I don't think he's going to be so timid, right? Like you can see that coming. And then he just decimates the guy. But
there's something really important to pull out of that right there, that what you said, Nick, because, and we've all heard the line, like real alpha males don't have to tell other people they're alpha males.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like real confidence, not like arrogance gets boastful, it gets loud, gets annoying, and like, you know, but like when you're overly talking about how good you are or, you know, how tough you are, whatever, there's probably like underneath the surface, there's probably a lot of insecurity, you know, and Tommy demonstrates this really well, and we can kind of use this as a takeaway where it's like, if you really are confident in yourself, you really don't need to care what other people think.
Well, and we see that juxtaposition right there in that scene because Mad Dog is that overly arrogant, pompous.
Yep.
He's got the mohawk. You know, he looks like the exact guy who is overcompensating for something, and he's growling and acting like he's, you know, the biggest.
Yeah, like what is
dog
he
in the
called,
pack.
Pops or Grandpa or something?
Yeah, just being
You know?
Unnecessarily obtuse. Yeah, and Tommy goes in there very calmly. Tommy's in control in that situation.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. He's in control, and like you do have to give Mad Dog credit because he did earn his spot, and he's got all the spotlights and stuff. But there's always a badder dog out there, man. Like,
oh yeah, there's always a bigger dog.
Yeah, there's always a bigger dog.
Yeah,
and you just have to, you know, be humble. You know, that's kind of the point. Is you can be humbled. So. That's good. I'm really glad that you didn't let me you brought that up because that's a giant scene. It's a great scene.
But it does lead into what will come next. We find out the Sparta tournament, single elimination tournament is coming up, and now Tommy is being courted to be included in it because that fight goes viral. Somebody's recording it with their phone and it goes viral. And so now everybody's asking, who's this Tommy Reardon guy? Mad Dog's in it. And so there's all of this going on there where now we're starting to see some of the characters we know that are coming in and starting to get folded into this tournament. And then I think Brendan's inclusion in it is probably less organic, but more fulfilling and satisfying than what Tommy's is. Like Tommy's is cool, but Brendan's is like earned, which is really, I mean,
well, I don't know if you could say that. Degree. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. You know where I was going to go with that.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like he was more of the team player and then it just fell in his lap.
Right. Exactly.
Tommy bullied his way in. But that goes back to their personalities too and how they're so different.
Right.
So like their paths kind of followed or mirrored their personalities, you know. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. So Brendan loses his job because he's been fighting, and then he goes. So we got to talk about this next character that we haven't talked about yet, and that is Eric Bana is his name, is the actor's name, and he.
Frank Grillo.
Oh dang it! Yep, you're right, Frank Grillo. Dang it, I can't believe I did that. Anyway, so Frank Grillo, he goes to the gym. Old buddies used to train him, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And asks the question that he doesn't really want to ask, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, we see him go to his former trainer, played by Frank Grillo of MCU Crossbones fame. That's probably what he's best known for. And he was in one of the Purge movies as well. I think a lot of people would know him from that. But he is. Yeah, at one point, you hear one of the commentators mention that he is one of the most successful trainers in the game. Mm-hmm. So he's Brendan's former trainer and friend. And this amazing scene, and I don't want to monopolize this, but
no, do it, man. Do your thing.
Brendan goes to him, and you see this great conversation that happens between the two of them, where he says, you know, they're catching up and they're talking, and you find out that part of the reason that Brendan's family is in such financial dire straits is because of the fact that his daughter was born with a heart defect. She had to have emergency surgery. They ended up, in order to be able to pay for all this, they had to take out a second mortgage on the home and just all of this kind of stuff. And so you see them kind of catching up. And then he says, well, I have a favor to ask. And without hesitation, and I'm blanking on the name of the trainer, but I'll call him Frank because that's the name of the actor. But Frank just says, listen, all my money's tied up in this place, but let me see what I can do for you. Without hesitation, he's just like, I haven't seen you in years, but yeah, I'll do what I can to help you guys out. And Brendan has presented to him in that moment a solution, or at least a partial solution to his problems, his financial issues. But he says no, in the same way that he said to the guy at the bank, we don't do it that way. When the guy recommended bankruptcy, he's not going to take a handout. He said, no, I'm here because I want you to train me. I want to get back in the ring and I want to make some real money doing this. He wanted to earn it. And it said a lot about both of those characters. And it was an outstanding display of manhood and masculinity done well, which I think is a theme that is running throughout the entire movie that flies right in the face of any narrative that we have of like basically all masculinity is toxic masculinity.
Yeah, I want to go back real quick to the bank teller scene because that infuriated me. That scene made me so angry. And the only thing in my mind that I could think of was if he was a Christian and if he was embedded into a local community in a local church, that's the entire purpose of he should be getting help from the church.
Absolutely.
Like that's part of the, for lack of benefits, that's part of the benefits of being in a local Christian community is asking for help. Like we have these medical bills and we need help paying for them, or we're going to lose our house. We're going to lose everything. And it's like, my heart kind of went out. And then also I had the thought of like how much safer you should feel. Yes, business is business, but if you're doing business with a Christian, like how much different would that have been? As opposed to just a bank teller, saying, that's all I can do.
Yeah. And doesn't Brendan say something like, well, you told me to take out this loan.
Yeah. Yep.
You advised me to do this. And then the bank teller is just kind of like, well, you did it.
Yeah.
Right? Just kind of deflects blame right back.
And there was a scene, there's a almost a throwaway line because it said kind of under his breath that to me was one of the most affecting in that scene when he says, oh yeah, your daughter is, her liver? And he said it was her heart. He said, heart. Yeah. And he's like there's so many stories. And it's just like, yeah, I'm sure you hear a lot of sob stories, but they're also people that are hurting and in need. And you can't even be bothered to remember, like write it down or something,
Yeah. Put it in a file.
Right.
How much extra work is it to remember?
Right.
That kind of thing. Just
it's like
infuriated me.
It's the Michael Scott Rolodex where he has lists.
That's right.
If you watch The Office, but
yeah, I do.
He's like everything in it. I just don't talk about it. Every color means I just don't talk about it.
That's so good.
But Frank Grillo's character's name is actually Frank.
I
looked that up while we were going through that, and his name is Frank Campana. Though
that's right.
The trainer's name.
Right.
Yeah.
Not Eric Bana.
Not Eric Bana. The Hulk.
Man, I lost it on that one. We'll do better next time.
I don't even think they look alike.
No, I don't know why I thought that. It's like just a whiff. Sometimes you just whiff, man.
It's because Frank Grillo is so ripped, he looks like the Hulk.
Yeah,
fair enough.
It's true. And he's incredible. Like he is. I don't know if he's ever been this well. Good joke. Yeah, that was nice. Well done. No, Frank Campana or Frank Grillo is very good in his role in this movie.
He's
I don't know that.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. He doesn't have a lot of movies where he gets to exercise a lot of acting chops, but he's really good in this. Another movie that he's really good in that's also I think is really underrated is a Liam Neeson movie called The Gray. Have you guys seen that?
Oh, long time ago.
Oh man, it came out I think the same year as Warrior, and so Frank Grillo's in both of them, and he's amazing in both. Maybe films.
I have seen that.
I would recommend it. Yeah.
Isn't that about a plane crash and wolves?
Yep. Yes, it is.
Okay, I did see that one. It's been a long time.
Yep.
I didn't realize
great
he was in
movie.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Liam Neeson at the very end like tapes knives to his hands and like goes after the wolf. It's like,
Oh man, I do need to watch
Yeah.
that again.
Yeah, that's another one. We should do that one sometime too.
Yeah,
but-
for sure. For sure. All right. So what's next?
So they go.
Go ahead.
Let's see. So Brennan is training. We get this great training montage where we see both of them doing their separate training. There's there are several scenes where you see Patty and Tommy training together. They're working together for the first time, interacting with for the first time since Tommy was like 15.
Right.
And he makes it clear that this is just about training. This is not about you and me. We're not father and son. You're my trainer. And Patty, I mean, he is so hungry for reconciliation through the whole movie. And Nick Nolte, honestly, like the pedigree of this movie in terms of the acting jobs is outstanding to begin with. Tom Hardy is awesome. Joel Edgerton is amazing in it. But to me, I don't think it gets any better than Nick Nolte in this movie. I think he is the pinnacle. And but he keeps trying to rekindle some sort of relationship with his son. Tommy wants nothing to do with that. So they're training, and this weird dynamic where they're together all the time, but there's this great distance between them. And then we see like some of the students are wanting to, they go and petition to the principal to be able to show the tournament I guess I'm getting ahead of myself because he's not in the tournament yet at this point. So,
I mean, if that's what, if you want to jump ahead, that's cool too. I think there was another scene. It just kind of left my head. I guess I was just going to say something along the lines of just like some of Tommy's one-liners throughout, like were just, like stick a knife in and just twist, man. Mm-hmm. They were just like, they did such a good job with the writing to really make you feel just the hatred, just how deeply he was wounded by his dad and just how unreconcilable things were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then contrast that with how he speaks on the phone to the wife of his fallen brother, right? Like, and if you haven't, I'm not talking about biological brother. I know you guys know that, but army brother, right? So, like, just the gentleness that he speaks to her with, contrasted with the hatred that he speaks to everyone else with, right? Yeah. It's really again, so just all the layers there.
Maybe we can break into some theology. This is a little on the spot. So like, I want to ask you guys, throw this out for maybe some discussion. What makes family? Because I see this trend, and I took this note down earlier, and you see Tommy, like kind of what you said just now, Nick, where he just talks to everyone like with hatred, and and I even think that there was a line when him and Brennan were on the beach, and essentially he said something to the effect of like I don't have anybody, like I have no family. He's like, I have nothing. But then when we hear him on that phone call with his the buddy that died from the military, it's almost as if they are his family. And I even think he maybe mentions that too. And I guess overarching, like, is family limited to just blood? Or is there something more?
Yeah, he does mention that in that scene on the beach. He sarcastically says to Brendan, "Who are you?" And then Brendan says, "I'm your brother." And he said, "Were you in the Corps?"
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so, like, just kind of signifying, you're not my brother. My brothers were those that were in the Corps with me. So, I think there's a yes and no in the answer to the question that you asked. It's because you can look at it within the church too, right? So, if you look at the church is in essence, to operate similar to a family, right? We're supposed to commune with one another, have fellowship with one another in a similar way to a family. But there's also within a church many different families that are going to be more united, or hopefully, in an ideal world, more united than the group as a whole. So I think there's definitely a sense in which family is more than blood, but then there's a uniqueness to your core family.
Right.
I think, and I don't know if that makes sense. That's just my initial thought to your question, but yeah.
But what if that uniqueness, because you said ideal world, what if that uniqueness isn't there?
Absolutely. Well, then, I guess then it becomes about the bond, right? It becomes about how tight is the bond. And
because it's clearly not there in the characters that we're talking about. It's literally just blood. And Tommy's like, well, you're not my brother. I don't know you.
Yeah. But there's still something to be said about that, though, right? I mean,
right.
Honor your father and your mother, right?
Right.
And there's no exception given, no caveats given, and you are to honor your father and your mother. And so within that means, regardless of the situation, there might be different specific ways of honoring and different ways that plays out in a practical way, but the command is still there. It doesn't say honor your best friend's dad, right? That's not a command necessarily. You love your neighbor, but the Bible specifically goes out of its way to say honor your father and your mother. So there is a uniqueness to that when compared to relationships that exist outside of that family unit.
Yeah, I think it's very clear that family is. For anybody who's ever seen a Fast and Furious movie, we know that you can choose your family in a lot of ways. But I do think a lot about. I have a men's group. We get together every week and we study scripture, and I'm closer with those guys than some of the family that I have. I have cousins and such that I haven't seen in years just because of proximity. But then I've got this close knit community. And I think it goes back to what you're talking about with, him going to the bank. And I think to his detriment, Brennan is very much trying to go at it alone, where he's like, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to figure this out. And I think that there is an impulse as a man. You're not talking just about taking care of your family. You're also talking about your self-worth is wrapped up in your ability to do that or your inability to do that. It is reflected in that. And so, he's very much, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make this happen. Whereas if he were in an intentional community, and I would, obviously the three of us are Christians, so we're going to say a faith-based community where you have a higher allegiance that you are submitting to, then he would not have been wanting in the way, or should not have been wanting in the way that he was. There should have been people in close proximity that would have been able to recognize the need and step in and help out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Because it's at some point it gets so bad that humility is easier to swallow than failure. So it's like, I need help, getting to that point of I need help, than as opposed to, bankruptcy or something that would be defined as failure. Right.
Right.
But I just had to ask that question because we see that as a thread in the movie a lot, because you've got Tommy that says, I don't know you. You're not my brother, Nick brought up the quote about being in the Corps. And then you've got Brennan that's like, no, you're my brother. I didn't even know she was sick. You're putting all of this blame on me and I didn't even know.
Yeah.
And there's this, it's just a mess, man. This family is just, it's a mess. Everybody's mad at everybody and nobody seems to know why except Tommy. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got their own little thing and they're all just kind of past each other. And that goes back to what you said, Jacob, about the fights. Like that's essentially what it is. It's fighting for the survival of that family. So yeah, that's what I got about that.
Yeah. And then to go along with that, you have the fight for family, and then you have this mess of a situation that you just mentioned, Parker, and the cause of it is a father who fails to love and lead his family, right? A father who abdicates his responsibility to do what is required of him for his family. He doesn't love his wife as Christ loved the church. He's the one abusing her, not laying himself down for her, right? He, the Bible says, do not provoke your children to anger, right? And so he's in abusing his wife and subjecting his kids to witnessing it, in his harsh treatment of his children. He's provoked them to anger. And you see that every time that these characters are on screen with him. What is their response? Anger. They're angry with him. And that plays out in real life. And that is the cause of all of the dysfunction, of all of the pain, all of the struggle, and the reason that they even have to fight to begin with is because their dad didn't love them the way a biblical father and husband is called to love.
And I think that kind of ties back into the whole analogy of Moby Dick, right? And the albatross, or the hovering shame and guilt, or burden, probably burden's the best word, would be the I guess the lack of living above reproach, or the lack of or the diminished witness, so that when Patty says, like, all of that's behind me, I'm a new person, I've been going to church, or I've been sober for how long, maybe I've found faith, whatever this, it's like falls on deaf ears. It doesn't mean anything to them because of what happened in the past. And to your point, Nick, it's like, as fathers and as men, we have to hold the line, and we have to submit ourselves to a greater authority, being Scripture and God, and hold that line, so that like our children even have a chance, and our wives even have a chance.
This kind of stuff, the way that Patty conducted himself, that kind of stuff has generational reverberations, and we see that played out in the movie. And we're not told this, but it's easy to imagine that maybe his father was a mean drunk, and his father, these are the kinds of things that can be handed down. And we need to hand down to our children truth and gentleness, and a good understanding of what masculinity is meant to be. And masculinity is not, for all the problems that, all the ways that the red pill bros, I think, identify some of the real problems in our society, and in the way that men and women interact with each other and things like that. They're so far from the truth when it comes to their prescriptions. And so you look at, like, we have to, I would say that they are peddling grievance and resentment in the same way that Tommy inherited that and Brennan inherited that. And so there comes a point where somebody has to break that generational cycle and say, it's time to do, like, we've done this way. We've got to do things. We've got to find a better way to do it.
Yeah, I think the red pill thing is so glaringly, obviously wrong when you have the Whatever podcast, and you have, Justin Lawler, or whatever his name is, on there, and Lila Rose asks him, well, you're a man of, discipline and self-control. Mm-hmm. Why can't you commit yourself to one woman? Mm-hmm. It's just not the way I'm wired. Like the the standard they have for themselves is so vastly different than the standard they have for the women that they are, fornicating with. It makes it so glaringly obvious that the morality is corrupted in that worldview.
And this stuff oscillates back and forth. Like, we live in a time right now where in many ways culturally women have an upper hand. And, I think that they would disagree and say that no, they don't. But, there are all these ways that you can, the way the courts favor mothers and, divorce courts and all this kind of stuff. Believe all women. There's all of these ways in which women have an upper hand. And it was because it's a response to a period of time where men had the cultural upper hand. And there will come a time, I'm sure, where men have the cultural upper hand again, and they will squander it because all of this is unmoored from something transcendent and true, which is Jesus Christ. That is the only thing that we have that we can build upon. And too many people are building on sand. And the storms are coming.
So. That's true, man. That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. Okay. What else do you have, Jacob? Any other scenes that you want to talk about?
So, through a series of events, Brendan is being trained and he's training alongside a guy who is entered into the tournament. They're on a run. That guy gets injured. Now there's a slot open. Brendan is able to slide into it. And so that's how he gets into the tournament. They're going through the tournament, and there is a participant in the tournament named Koba, who is a Russian MMA fighter. And really, I think he's the closest that we have to a villain, if there is one in the movie. I think really the broken family dynamic is the villain, but he's the closest to but one of the things that I was thinking about that I thought was really interesting is that it's Brennan who goes up against him. And Frank Campana keeps the way that he trains his fighters is to fight in the mind. And so he's talking about how the fight is actually being fought up here. And so you have Brennan who is playing chess. And then you've got Tommy who's, I don't know, playing rock, paper, scissors, some more like brute force kind of game. He's Rock'em Sock'em Robots is what Tommy's playing. And Koba's doing the same thing. So one of the things that I was thinking about is how different the dynamic would be if it was Tommy that went up against Koba. It's a single elimination, so one of them is going to be out of the tournament. But you have two characters who are just brute, unbridled force. And it would be like, two immovable objects meeting. And so one of them would eke out, one of them would be stronger than the other. And that would be probably thrilling to watch, but it would not be nearly as satisfying as watching Brennan, who's wiry compared to certainly Koba, but he's wiry compared to Tommy, and who is fighting with his mind more than his body, and he's thinking through the moves. And you see, this is a character who his lead-in music, his walk-in music is, I think it's Beethoven. It's very cerebral, and it's very satisfying when you see the man who is in control of himself, the man who is disciplined, who is not driven by his emotions, who is able to overcome this force of nature, which is Koba. And I thought that was just really satisfying, and the dynamic, how differently it would go if it were Tommy that went up against him. And I just don't think it would have been nearly as satisfying.
I agree.
Yeah. And in that, so that's the fight where Brendan's basically getting destroyed for most of it, right? He's getting beaten down, and then there's that scene in the corner during the stoppage or during the timeout, and Frank is training him, right? Trying to get him focused, trying to get him going, and then he says, if you don't win this fight, we can go home, and then follows that up with, if you don't win this fight, you don't have a home. Like, and that one just like, man, not only does it get my blood pumping, like,
I know.
man, let's go, let's do this. But then it's also like just it's like a realization moment where like I feel for Brendan because they paint it in a way if you know anything about sports movies, like you said at the beginning, the underdog's going to come through. Yeah. But you can't see it happen. You're like, how is this even going to happen? Like, he's going to lose his home. His family's going to be homeless. They're going to have nowhere to go. He can't do this. And then just saying that out loud through the character of Frank is just like, it just hits. I mean, it's just one of those incredible things where it could have been this cheesy line that everyone makes fun of, but it's just delivered in such a way where it just, it gets you in the emotions. It gets the blood going, ready like to jump through the screen and fight. It's just really, really well done.
It's outstanding. There's so many scenes like that are just so emotionally affecting. I think probably the one for me that is probably the most affecting is when Nick Nolte, when Patty breaks his sobriety, and you see Tommy, and he's laying in bed. He wakes up to shouting, and he comes out of they're staying in a nice suite. He comes out of his bedroom into the shared space, and Patty is staggering around with a disheveled robe on and a bottle of booze, and he's got his headphones on. He's listening to Moby Dick, and he's just shouting, "Turn the boats around, you godless SOBs." And it's like that scene right there made me just be like, well, I'm going to now watch every Nick Nolte movie that's ever been made.
Yeah.
But he was outstanding in that, but you just see the brokenness. And I don't know how he was able to channel that and exude that as an actor, because it felt so raw and so real. Like, what an outstanding scene.
Well, I mean, that kind of calls into question, because that scene was initiated by Tommy's harsh words.
Yes.
And that scene is kind of saying, like, how long do I have to pay for the sins of my past?
Yeah.
Because I can't get my kids back. I am openly saying that I was wrong and I did all this, and I still, like, the hatred is just so thick that I can't cut through it. And finally you see a change in Tommy.
Mm-hmm. You finally see him soften.
Yep. It finally gets to him, because to see his dad like that, it kind of, and then he like kind of puts him down to bed and gets up behind him, and he just kind of holds him, and I guess Nick Nolte's character Patty just kind of drifts off into a drunken sleep, and but that's the real first change you see in Tommy's. In Tommy, that character.
You're right. That's the first change that we see in him. That's not the first revelation, because we do see that scene where he talks to Manny's widow and things like that. Those are revelations, but this is the first time where we see the walls kind of being chipped away.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. He finally sees.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, he finally sees his dad as just a broken man rather than the cause of all of his problems, right? This guy is broken. He's in pain too,
right?
Is what he finally sees.
It's not all about me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
It's just crazy.
So then they go into they work their way up the ranks. Tommy gets a rematch with Mad Dog, beats him handily again.
Maybe faster than the first time.
Yeah, just waylays him. And then Brennan takes down Koba. They get down to the final match, and this is where it's Brian Callum from Mad TV. He's in the movie, which I thought that was great too, because he's actually, as I understand it, he's super into MMA.
So isn't Koba Kurt Angle?
Yes, Koba is Kurt Angle. I was going to bring that up if no one else did.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he's not what's his face from Ireland, so I don't know. I don't even remember his name at this point. I said it earlier, but Conor McGregor. He's not Conor McGregor, so I don't know who he is.
Oh yeah. No.
Kurt Angle. Yeah.
Go ahead.
He's a WWE wrestler, and before
Gotcha.
Before he was a WWE wrestler, he was actually an Olympic wrestler and was a gold medalist.
Gotcha.
I think it was the 96 Olympics. I think he won a gold medal.
The only thing that I've seen him in other than Warrior is that one GIF where he's just like,
yeah.
That's the only thing I know him from is that GIF and Warrior.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Super funny.
And yes, I say GIF.
Is that a Pittsburgh thing?
No, there's like a whole debate on whether it's GIF or GIF. We don't have to get into that.
Yeah.
I'm a GIF. I'm a GIF guy.
We're gonna have to get into the octagon over this one. So they get into that final fight, and it is brother against brother. It's revealed then to the audience. It's revealed to everyone. There's one thing that we did neglect to talk about, and that was that there was, as far as Tommy's past goes, it comes to light that he was going AWOL, and as he was leaving, as he was running away from battle, he came across a tank that had been submerged and the guys were drowning and going to drown inside, and he ripped the door off of this tank and then rescued the guys. And one of their body cam, I guess one of them had a body cam, captured his face. They then identified him. He was, which you find out that the reason that he's going by Tommy Reardon rather than Conlon is their last name. Reardon is their mother's maiden name. And so he's using that, which at first you're led to believe is because he doesn't want anything to do with his father. But then you find out it's because he's AWOL. So he's trying to make it hard for him to be identified. But they do identify him as the guy who ripped the tank door off, and the guys are so overwhelmed with gratitude. They finally have the person they can thank that they go public, and it now puts a spotlight on him where now he is going to be taken into custody for going AWOL. And yeah, so they're going into this final fight. Tommy has pledged his winnings. I think it's a $2 million purse. He pledges his winnings to his best friend Manny's widow and son, because he promised Manny that he would take care of them after Manny died. And then you've got Brennan, who is, he's got all these medical bills. He needs to be able to keep his house and all this. And so you've got both of them now, these two, not only are they two brothers, but they both have good reasons to be fighting. And so they're in this final fight. And as I said, like, you don't know who you want to win. Can they just split the winnings? Like, can they just like make up and everybody go home happy? But it's not going to be like that. And they go into the fight, and it is absolutely heart-wrenching.
Yeah, it's even kind of hard to watch.
Yeah, it is. It's when at one point I think Tommy's shoulder gets dislocated, and so he's now hobbled. And Brennan, you can see he's like feeling all this guilt as he's having to fight his brother, especially his injured brother. He doesn't want to do that. He just wants to reconcile. But he's got to fight for what it's like the dynamic, man. It's so thick. And then in comes the National with About Today. And when that song starts playing, I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like I've said, I've seen the movie probably 15 times, and I have never once watched that scene with a dry eye. I watched it today, and I just sat there. I was like that meme where it's like, did he even cry in Titanic? Men have no hearts. And then it's just like something, it's just like Tommy, and it says About Today, and then it's just like, oh.
So I did a lot of thinking after I watched the movie, and I wrote this down. I don't know if it's any good, but I'm sure you guys will give me your opinions on it. But these are some of the things this is kind of what I thought after the final fight scene and kind of thinking about the movie as a whole. I wrote, sometimes it seems necessary to fight, to argue your point, and to make those in opposition understand where you are coming from and how you are feeling. It is in our bearing the image of God that we feel the value of being heard. However, this approach can only get you so far. In a symbolic moment of relinquishing pride and anger, Tommy submitted to his brother. revealing the pathway forward. This pathway to healing involves coming to terms with the reality of our own responsibilities, wounds, and transgressions. It is through the submission and acceptance of these truths that we may achieve the ability to forgive others, receive forgiveness from others, and ultimately receive forgiveness from God by laying it all at the feet of Christ and accepting the debt we owe, the debt he paid, and the new identity we receive through the atonement of his death. So I think it's interesting that Tommy was so stubborn and he had to fight. And Brennan needed to fight for his family. And like in I guess in a way, like Tommy needed that in order to heal. Mm-hmm. Like, does that make sense? Like, and he submitted, he like there was nothing gonna change him. There had to be a collision course in order for him to just, like, even at the end, it was like, it's okay, Tommy. I love you, Tommy. Like, just submit, give up. Like, submit to the hatred, give it away. You know, so I think that was kind of where I was at in that fight scene. Was as gut wrenching as it had to happen in order for Tommy to completely change and to get over the past.
Yeah, I mean, not to overly spiritualize it, but there is that scene where, just like you said, Tommy and Brennan's got Tommy in a chokehold, and he's saying, just tap. I love you. And it's so like raw and affecting and so effective. But like, I feel like in a lot of ways that's like us wrestling with our own pride, where Christ is saying, like, I've got you, just let go of this junk, whatever it is, let go of it. I love you. Just let go of it. And it's so hard to do, but then there's this beautiful picture that happens after that when Tommy finally taps and the fight is over and the people start rushing in. And what does Brennan do? He immediately covers him and starts protecting him from everybody around and just like pushing them all back. And then when they walk out, he walks out holding his brother. They're restored. The relationship is restored. And I think that is such a beautiful picture that I'm so grateful. I'm just so grateful that the Gavin, whatever his name is, that made the movie. I'm just so grateful that he just made it because it's such a good movie. Gavin O'Connor. Well done, Gavin O'Connor. If you're listening, Gavin O'Connor, give us a sequel or something.
Yeah, good job.
Well done.
And right like that. So I think this goes right along with what both of you just said, in that, like, the natural response to believing that you're loved is surrender. Right? So, like, Tommy needs to know that everything is going to be okay. He needs to know that it's all okay. Right? He's got military police waiting to take him in. He's got a friend who he promised he would take care of his family, and he's not going to be able to do that if he doesn't win this fight. He's got to keep fighting. He's got to keep going. He can't let anything go. He has to know that everything is going to be okay, or else he can never give up. He can never surrender to any of this. Because his whole life, nothing was ever okay, right? Nothing was ever good. Nothing was ever like positive, or maybe there were happy times, but he was an angry kid. He's an angry adult who has all this trauma, and he just needs to know that it's going to be okay. And that when his big brother says, it's okay, I love you, Tommy finally believes it. And when we believe that, we surrender. Just like when we're coming to Christ, when we truly believe and are convinced of his love for us, we believe that it's going to be okay, and we surrender. And that's exactly the picture that you get right there. And that, Jacob, what you just talked about, that like that closing image where Brendan is covering his brother, walking out with him. It's incredible. It's great. Yeah.
And I don't have any problem believing, $2 million is a lot of money. I don't have any problem believing that Brendan, and again, we're talking about these characters like they're real people, but I have no problem believing that he would have used that money well, insofar as taking care of his own needs, but also taking care of Manny's widow, knowing once he would have learned what was going on, that he would have felt a responsibility toward her as well, if only because of what she meant to his brother. I have no problem believing that the resolution that we don't see is that everybody is restored.
Right. I agree.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that we don't see that, and it's not like just given to us yet. Yeah. I probably 90% of the people who watch this movie walk away with the conclusion, oh, Brendan's just going to help him out, right? Brendan's going to take care of him. Brendan's going to take care. Why? Because what the movie wanted you to see is what love, what happens when there's love there. And so you get Tommy's surrender, you get Brendan's love, and you know that it's all going to be okay, right? You know that everything's going to be taken care of. You don't need to have it kind of spelled out for you the way that maybe some Hallmark movies or something like that would do. It's just people are wired, even though we're not perfect in giving love and we're not perfect in receiving love, people are wired in a way that when we see it, we know what results from it.
Yeah.
And that's just one of those things where, because we're made in the image of God, we know that everything is going to be okay and it's all going to work out in that moment when we see the love of a brother to another.
So then I guess the final thing to talk about is, where does Patty fit in all that?
Man, so there's the break, but right before the final bout of their fight, and Brendan's sitting in his corner, and he looks over, and he meets eyes with Patty, and you can just see, like, I mean, you want to talk about feeling like everybody was feeling raw, but Patty felt it, I think, the most, because he's watching his two sons going through this, and he knows that one of them is going to have to lose. And he looks at Brennan, and there's this look that passes between them where he just kind of nods, like, you know what you have to do. And Brennan nods, and it almost like he gave him permission to do what he needed to do to finish this and to do. Yeah,
that's super important.
Yeah. And it's a moment where you see them, he's rebuffed his father over and over again throughout the movie. And this is really the first time that you see him looking to his father as opposed to looking away from his father. And it was a really great scene. Again, outstanding acting, but go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to add to what you were saying, because it's actually a deeper, what would you call that? Like a sub scene or whatever, but because
Subtext.
The whole, something, it was just, the whole movie was all about Brennan not feeling valued by his dad because he had always trained Tommy. And Brennan's line in the movie was, "You've never had time for underdogs."
Mm-hmm.
So when he gets that nod from his dad, it just kind of revitalizes, gives him enough confidence to go out there and beat Tommy. And that's exactly what Tommy needed, was to be beaten.
Yeah.
So, and it was, an arrival moment, the same kind of arrival moment that we all related to with Tommy in the gym early on, where's you owe me $250 or you owe my $200, whatever it is. But that was Brennan's version of that arrival, was like, okay, my father sees me now.
Yeah.
And he just gave me permission to go do what I needed to do.
Yeah, it's
so good, man. It's so good.
Well, and then there's that, after they finish the fight, Patty just turns and walks away. And you don't see him again for the rest of the movie, which doesn't last long. I mean, it goes to the credits before long, but his boys are reconciled to one another. And so it almost is like he's now content. He's like, I may not have the reconciliation, but there has been reconciliation, and that's good enough for right now. Now, maybe, who's to say, like, maybe they're reconciled to one another, down the road, or they work toward that. But for the time being, something has been fixed, and he was able to do something to help it get there, and that's good enough for right now.
Or maybe his goal wasn't to fix his relationships with the boys. The entire goal was to just fix what he broke for the boy, like their relationship. Maybe it's something like that. I don't know. Yeah. Nick, I think you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I have seen this movie lots, probably not as many times as you, Jacob, but until you just said that, I had never noticed the look that you're talking about and the nod. I've never noticed that, and I've always kind of had that same question in the back of my mind after watching it. The same question that Parker just said, well, what about Patty? You know what? Where I've been, and you just like blew my mind with that, because I recognize that scene now. Like I never made that connection, and so now I'm gonna have to go watch it again and be ready for that. But yeah, that's good stuff.
Any final words, Jacob?
Man, if nothing else, I hope this discussion, I hope that somebody listens to this and they say, "Oh, I remember that movie. That didn't mean anything to me. That didn't look good to me." And that they're now like, "Holy crap, I got to go out and watch this movie right now." If it revitalizes some interest in the movie, that'd be cool. But it's just rich. I think that it is criminally underrated. I think one of the things I thought was really interesting, if you'll indulge me, is that if you I looked at a bunch of like best sports movies of all time. It didn't make the Rolling Stone top 30 in 2020 at all. It did not make the Vulture top 50 sports movies of all time this year. It didn't make the Forbes top 42. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, they've got 150 best sports movies of all time, and it ranked number 70. And I think that is a tragedy. I think that this movie is far greater than the paltry response that it has received, and I hope that this revitalizes some interest in this movie, because it really, there's so much to like about it. There's so much depth to it, and it really, I think, portrays in a lot of ways, it portrays good and bad masculine qualities and tendencies. It displays them well, and it shows us how we can be better, at least in a secular sense. And then obviously, you know, as we've demonstrated, I think pretty well, is you can tease out some transcendent truth out of that as well. So
that's so good, man. It's been such a blessing to have you on, Jacob. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah,
guys, go check out Jacob at JTDXN_ on X.
That's it.
And yeah, go watch Warrior. And if you're gonna watch WatchWell. We'll see you guys.